You leave certain conversations smaller than you entered. It is not something that happens with noise. It is silent, it is gradual, and you only realize it later, when you are in the car on the way home, in the shower at night, or in a quiet moment on a Monday morning. There is a feeling that your gifts are smaller than you thought, that your certainty about the path you chose has become a little more porous, that you might be overestimating what you are capable of doing. And the most disturbing part is that often this conversation did not come from a declared enemy. It came from someone close, sometimes from someone you respect, sometimes from a work meeting, a family lunch, a message that began with praise and ended with an installed doubt that you did not ask for. If you recognize this pattern in your own life, this video is for you. Because there is a mechanism, neurologically documented and spiritually described with surgical precision in the scriptures, that operates within you during and after these interactions. It has a name, it has a cause, and most importantly, it has a solution. I will show you all three. But there is a revelation in the middle of this video that will surprise you. The primary source of this voice that makes you diminish is not where you are looking. And when you understand this, it will completely change the way you react when it appears. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, do it now before continuing. Here we go deep. No surface, no euphemism. Subscribe and activate the bell, because the next video will be equally important. Versen diastesis was sarsada. Let us begin with what happens inside you, with the actual physiology of the process, because understanding the mechanism is the first step toward no longer being controlled by it. There is a phenomenon that researchers at Unicamp, who study social behavior and self-assessment in adults, describe as identity threat by implicit comparison. It works like this. When you are in an interaction where someone, even without declared intent, even in an apparently kind manner.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you, who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.
Conveys the message that what you do, what you are, or the path you have chosen is questionable, insufficient, or naive. Your limbic system registers this as a threat. Not a physical threat, an identity threat. And here is where it gets interesting. The brain's response to an identity threat uses the same neural circuits as the response to a physical threat. The amygdala is activated. Cortisol rises. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for long-term thinking, calibrated judgment, and clarity of purpose, begins to yield processing to immediate defense systems. In practical terms, you become less yourself, more reactive, more defensive, with reduced access to the deepest convictions that guide your decisions. And then the conversation ends, and you walk away carrying the neurological effect of the threat without necessarily being aware that you were threatened. It feels like just a sensation, a slight withering inside. Researchers at UFMG investigating professional identity and social pressure in Brazilian workers over 40 identified a pattern that repeated consistently in the studied groups. Individuals who underwent interactions of high implicit comparison, even positively framed, such as, "You are very talented, but is this path realistic?" reported a measurable reduction in confidence in their specific capabilities for up to 72 hours after the event. 72 hours, 3 days of cognitive processing affected by a single conversation. And most of these people did not know this was happening. They thought they were just thinking better about their own choices, when in fact, They were processing the residue of an identity threat that the brain had registered and had not yet discarded. This has a name in the scriptures as well. Not a metaphorical name, a precise name, used in a specific context that you will recognize immediately. There is a man in the book of Judges whose story begins with a scene that seems strange for a biblical hero. When the angel of the Lord finds him, he is not in a position of courage, he is hiding, threshing wheat inside a winepress, a closed place, below ground level, so that the enemies would not see what he was harvesting and come to take it. This man's name is Gideon, and the angel opens the conversation with one of the most surprising greetings in the entire Bible. "The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." Mighty man to a man hiding in a hole. Gideon's response is immediate and completely human. He does not accept the greeting. He questions it. He enumerates evidence that the situation does not correspond to the proclaimed identity. And then, when God calls him to lead the liberation of Israel, Gideon says a phrase that must be examined carefully. "O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." In Hebrew, the word Gideon uses for least is tisair, tsair. It means young, small, the one with the least status, the one who occupies the last place in the family hierarchy. Gideon was not being falsely modest, he was reporting his internalized identity, that which he genuinely believed about himself after years of living in a context that confirmed that belief. And here is the point that matters. The voice that told Gideon he was the least was not the voice of an external enemy. It was an internal voice, built by an external environment. The Midianites did not need to say anything. The environment of scarcity, of constant threat, of hiding to survive, this environment had installed in Gideon a narrative of identity that he carried as if it were objective fact. This is what the environment of implicit comparison does to you. It does not need to declare that you are less. It creates conditions so that you yourself construct that conclusion. God's response to Gideon is not to refute the facts he presented. It is not to say you are not the least. It is to say something completely different. Go in this thy might. The strength was not derived from Gideon's position in the family hierarchy. It was derived from something that completely transcended that hierarchy. And as long as Gideon was operating from the identity of Tsair, the least, he was operating from a narrative that the environment had constructed, not from the identity that had been declared over him. Do you understand what is being said here? The voice that makes you diminish is not necessarily the voice of a malicious person. Sometimes it is a narrative that the environment built over time, and that a conversation, a comment, a question formulated in a certain way simply activates. The trigger is external, the narrative is internal, and it is the internal narrative that needs to be addressed. Click the like button now if you recognize this pattern in your own story. This simple gesture helps the channel reach more people who are going through the same thing today. Now I need to introduce two terms that will give precision to what we are describing, one from Greek and one from Hebrew, because imprecision of language on this subject has cost dearly to people who deserved more clarity. The first word is diakrisis. Diakrisis. It appears in 1 Corinthians 12, in the context where Paul lists the gifts of the Spirit and is generally translated as discerning of spirits. But the etymology is richer than that translation delivers. Diakrisis comes from dia, through completely, plus krinein, to separate, distinguish, judge with precision. Diakrisis is the ability to completely separate what is mixed, to distinguish, within an experience that arrives as a single block, what is of God, what is human noise, and what is internalized narrative operating as truth. When you leave a conversation with that feeling of withering, diakrisis is the tool that allows you to separate what in that experience needs to be discarded from what needs to be examined. Because not everything that arrives in these interactions is trash. Sometimes there is a legitimate question embedded in a destructive delivery. Diakrisis separates the two. It discards the wrapping, retains the usable content, and also discards the content that has no utility for your construction. But diakrisis presupposes something. It presupposes that you know what you are separating things from, that you have a reference identity clear enough to function as a standard of comparison, and this is where the second word comes in. The Hebrew word is kabvod. kavod, translated as glory, honor, or weight. The semantic root of kavod is mass, substance, that which has its own weight. When the scriptures speak of the kavod of God, they are speaking of a presence that has inherent substance, that does not need external validation to exist, that does not diminish when someone fails to recognize it. And there is a direct parallel for human identity. You have a kavod, an inner weight, a substance that was placed in you, and that does not depend on external recognition to be real. When you are operating from your kavod, the voice that makes you diminish passes through you without taking root. Not because you ignored the comment, it is because your identity has enough of its own weight so that the comment finds no empty soil where to plant doubt. Gideon's problem was not the absence of kavod. It was that the environment had buried the kavod under a narrative of tsaya so persistent that he could no longer feel his own weight. God's work with Gideon was not to add kavod. It was to remove the layers of narrative that were covering what was already there. FGV published a survey on leadership and self-concept in mid-career Brazilian professionals that revealed a disturbing datum. Most respondents could clearly describe their technical skills, but had significant difficulty articulating what researchers called non-conditional value identity. The perception that their value exists independently of current performance, social approval, or recent results. In other words, most operated without clear access to their own kavod. And without that access, any interaction of implicit comparison finds fertile soil. But I must take you now to where the most important revelation of this video lies, because until now, we have spoken of the external voice, the conversation, the comment, the environment. Now I must speak of the internal mechanism that transforms that external voice into a lasting narrative. And this requires honesty. Most people who watch content on discernment and negative influences leave the video monitoring the environment. They begin to evaluate the people around them with a magnifying glass. Every conversation becomes an analysis. Every comment is weighed on the scale of, is this building me up or destroying me? And this exercise has some value, but it completely misses the most important part of the problem. Because the voice that most consistently makes you diminish is not external. It is internal. It is the voice that was already there before the problematic conversation, and that used the conversation as fuel. It is the narrative of tsaya that the environment built over years, and that now operates autonomously, using external triggers to renew and strengthen itself. Neuroscience has a technical name for this mechanism. PUCSP, in its research program on cognition and self-assessment, documents what researchers call identity threat confirmation bias. The brain, once it has internalized a narrative about itself, I am not good enough for this. People like me don't get there. What I do has no real value, begins to filter reality selectively, prioritizing evidence that confirms that narrative and minimizing that which contradicts it. In practical terms, you can receive 10 compliments and 1 criticism in the same day, and what will circulate in your head at 3 in the morning is the criticism. Not because you are weak, because your brain is doing exactly what it was trained to do, confirm the dominant narrative about your identity. This is what Paul is describing in Romans 8 when he uses the word phronema. Generally translated as mindset or inclination, phronema in its root describes the habitual pattern of processing of the mind, the direction toward which it naturally inclines when there is no conscious interference. Paul distinguishes 2 patterns of phronema, that of the flesh, which he describes as death, not physical death, but progressive impoverishment, narrowing of perspective, reduction of capacity, and that of the spirit, which he describes as life and peace. The voice that makes you diminish is not just an external comment. It is a pattern of phronema that was installed over time and that now processes external comments in a specific way, amplifying those that confirm the narrative of tsaya and filtering those that contradict it. Changing the external pattern, avoiding difficult conversations, distancing yourself from people who activate the mechanism is useful but insufficient. Because the phronema does not change environments. It goes with you, and in a new environment, it will find new triggers for the same pattern. What must change is the phronema, the habitual pattern of processing, the direction toward which your mind inclines when there is no conscious interference. And here is where the story of Nehemiah becomes relevant in a way you did not expect. Nehemiah is one of the most underestimated biblical characters in the context of personal development. Most readings focus on the walls of Jerusalem, the reconstruction project, leadership under pressure, logistical organization. But what is rarely examined is the psychological mechanism that his antagonists utilized and how Nehemiah neutralized it. Sanballat and Tobiah did not attack Nehemiah with physical violence at first. They attacked with language, with questions that seemed reasonable but carried destructive premises. What do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? Each question was an assertion disguised as an interrogation. Your project is ridiculous. Your resources are insufficient. You are overestimating what you are capable of doing. And later, when the pressure increased, they tried another tactic. They sent for Nehemiah to meet outside the walls 4 times, and Nehemiah responded 4 times with the same phrase, which is one of the most powerful in all biblical literature regarding focus and identity. I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you? Why should the work cease whilst I leave it and come down to you? Nehemiah was not being rude. He was not ignoring his interlocutors out of arrogance. He was performing a phronema assessment in real time. If I go down, my processing system will leave construction mode and enter defense mode. I have no guarantee that I will return with the same level of clarity. The work cannot wait for the time it would take to recalibrate. He knew that the greatest threat was not what Sanballat could do on the walls. It was what the conversation with Sanballat could do inside Nehemiah. The 5th attempt was different. They sent a letter with a specific public accusation. It is reported among the heathen, and Gashmu saith it, that thou and the Jews think to rebel. An accusation aimed not only at intimidating, but at installing doubt about the legitimacy of the project itself, to make Nehemiah begin to process reality from the perspective of the accuser. And Nehemiah responded with something that seems simple, but is neurologically sophisticated. There are no such things done as thou sayest, but thou feignest them out of thine own heart. He named the mechanism. He did not debate the content of the accusation as if it were legitimate. He identified the source. This is a construction. It is not reality. It is the narrative of your heart being projected as if it were mine. This is diacrisis in operation. Precise separation between what is truth and what is noise presented as truth. I want you to write now in the comments, I will not come down. These 4 words are not just a reference to Nehemiah. They are a declaration about your own process at this moment, that you will not abandon the construction you are in the middle of to respond to every voice that wants to pull you from your position. Write it there. I will not come down. But there is a 3rd story that needs to be told here, because it addresses the most subtle and most devastating aspect of the mechanism we are discussing. The aspect in which the voice that makes you diminish does not try to diminish you directly. It tries to make you be someone else. When David was called to face Goliath, King Saul offered his own weapons: bronze armor, a sword, a helmet, the best tools available. David tried them on, and then he said something that seems naive, but is one of the most courageous acts documented in the scriptures. I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And he took off the armor. He went with what he knew how to use. The text does not record that Saul tried to convince David that he was incapable or small. The pressure was more sophisticated than that. It was the pressure of the offering. Here are the tools validated by past success, used by those with experience and authority. If you reject this, you are rejecting accumulated wisdom. You are being naive. You are taking an unnecessary risk. The voice that makes you diminish sometimes operates exactly like this. It does not tell you that you are worth less. It offers you an external model of how you should be, operate, sound, position yourself, and the implicit pressure is, if you do not accept this model, you are making a mistake. You are being reckless, you are wasting an opportunity. And Saul's armor on David did not fit. Not because the armor was bad, it was the best available. It did not fit because it was not David's armor. It was not the mode of operation from which David had kavod, own weight, inherent substance, built competence. David did not go to kill Goliath despite refusing Saul's armor. He went in part because of it, because he went as himself, and it was from the place of genuine identity that the precision came. Datafolha published a survey on decision-making and regret in Brazilian adults that revealed a consistent pattern. Most long-term regrets, the decisions people looked back on and said, "This is where I went wrong," did not come from having taken risks. They came from having adopted someone else's model for a situation that required their own, from having worn Saul's armor when they were David. The voice that makes you diminish does not always sound like criticism. Sometimes it sounds like an offer, like care, like experience being shared. And the diacrisis you need to cultivate distinguishes not only the explicit attack, but the well-intentioned armor that does not fit your body. Activate the bell now so you don't miss the next episode. Because in the next video, I will enter a theme that directly complements what we are discussing today. How you recognize when you are operating from your real identity versus when you are operating from an identity that the environment built for you, and the specific process of return when you realize you have gone off axis. Activate the bell. Now for the practical steps. Because discernment without application is information that occupies space but produces no result. The first step is to map the patterns, not the people. This is critical. The goal is not to leave this video identifying who in your life is Sanbaya. That exercise is useless and frequently unfair because most people who activate the mechanism in you have no conscious intention of doing so. The goal is to identify the pattern that installs itself in you. What types of conversation leave you with the feeling of withering? What contexts consistently activate the narrative of Tseya? What environments regularly make you question what outside of them seemed obvious? When you have mapped the pattern, you can prepare the phronema before exposure. You can enter that environment with active awareness instead of automatic reactivity. You can establish the internal state before the trigger finds it. The second step is to create a kavod anchor. I'm not talking about positive affirmations recited mechanically. I'm talking about a specific memory, concrete and personal evidence of an occasion when you operated from your real identity and the result confirmed that this identity has substance. A moment when you were yourself, in your tool, in your mode, and it worked. Not a dream. A verifiable memory. Neuroscientists who study emotional regulation, including researchers at the Brain Institute of Unicamp, document that the retrieval of emotionally positive and specific memories in moments of identity threat interrupts the cycle of amygdala activation more efficiently than abstract reasoning. In practical terms, instead of trying to argue with yourself while leaving a difficult conversation, you resort to the anchor, a concrete memory, a moment of verified kavod. The third step is Nehemiah's response, naming the mechanism without debating the content. When the internal voice begins, maybe I am overestimating, maybe this path is not realistic, maybe I should be different than I am, the wrong response is to debate the content, to start looking for counter-evidence, building an argument, weighing pros and cons. Because entering the debate presupposes that the premise of the debate is legitimate, that the question is open. Nehemiah's response was more economical. They are inventions of your heart. He did not debate. He named the mechanism. This voice is operating in identity threat mode. It is not an objective analysis of reality. It is the pattern of Tseya trying to confirm itself. And then he returned to the work. This is not denial. It is diacrisis. You recognized what it is, you named it with precision, and you chose not to feed the debate. The fourth step is to protect the timing of the return. After an interaction that activated the mechanism, a difficult conversation, an environment of implicit comparison, a criticism that arrived in a destructive way, the brain needs time to deactivate the defense systems and return to the state of access to kavod. This time varies by person, but researchers at UFMG who study recovery from identity threat identify a typical window of a few hours to a few days, depending on the intensity of the activation and the person's practice of regulation. The most common mistake during this window is making important decisions. Because the phronema is still inclined toward threat mode, and decisions made in this state tend to confirm the narrative of Sair, retreats that should not happen, concessions that should not be made, changes of plan based on temporarily distorted evaluation. David did not accept Saul's armor and run to the battlefield immediately. He tried it, evaluated it, removed it. There was a process of discernment before action. Protect that process. Do not make strategic decisions in the reactivation window. The fifth step is to deliberately return to the work. This is what distinguishes those who cross this process from those who stay in it. Nehemiah did not just refuse to go down once. He refused 4 times, and then he continued building. The deliberate return to construction is the most powerful act of refuting the mechanism, not because it proves something to others, but because it actively reorients the phronema. Each time you return to the work after being activated by the mechanism, you are doing something neurologically real, training the brain to process the identity threat as noise to be filtered, not as a signal to be obeyed. You are recalibrating the habitual pattern of processing. You are building a phronema of life and peace, in Paul's vocabulary, instead of a phronema of death and narrowing. Recalibration does not happen in a single moment of revelation. It happens in the pattern of return, once and again, until the pattern reverses and the habitual direction of your mind is kavod, not tser. Let me tell you what is at stake beyond your individual experience. You are over 35 years old. You have gone through enough time for the mechanism we discussed today to have had the opportunity to install itself in layers. It is not the fault of any specific person. It is the accumulation of environments, of interactions, of moments when the narrative of Tser found fertile soil and installed itself a little deeper. And there is something waiting on the other side of the process we are describing. Something that Gideon discovered, that Nehemiah protected, that David preserved by refusing Saul's armor. It is not just the personal benefit of a more solid identity. It is the capacity to transmit that solidity. The greatest impact of a person who has learned to operate from genuine kavod, who has developed enough diakrasis to separate noise from signal, who has built a phronema oriented toward life and not toward threat, the greatest impact of that person is not what they achieve for themselves. It is what becomes possible for the people around them. Gideon, after going through the process, led 300 men against an army of impossible proportions. Nehemiah, after refusing to go down 4 times, completed the reconstruction of the walls in 52 days, a time that the adversaries themselves recognized as supernatural. David, after going as David and not as Saul, inaugurated an entire era. What is at stake when you allow the voice that makes you diminish to install itself is not just your immediate peace. It is what remains unbuilt because you were operating from an identity smaller than the one you carry. The kavod that was placed in you is the size of a work, not a hiding place. If this video named something that was nameless in your experience, share it with someone who is in the middle of this process now. Sometimes the thing a person needs is not more effort. It is the clarity of understanding what is happening inside them. You can be the one who delivers that clarity today. Share it. Let me close with what you have learned here, because this is the type of content to be revisited, not just consumed once. You learned that the voice that makes you diminish has a real neurological mechanism, identity threat by implicit comparison, that activates the same defense circuits as a physical threat, and that reduces access to the phronema of clarity for up to 72 hours. You learned that the Tser, Gideon's least, was not an objective assessment of reality. It was a narrative built by the environment that had buried the kavod, the own weight and genuine identity, under layers of negative confirmation. You learned that diakrasis, the discernment of precise separation, is the tool that distinguishes the noise that must be discarded from the content that must be examined within an experience that arrives as a single block. You learned that Nehemiah did not go down, not because he could not, because he knew that the greater danger was not on the walls. It was in the conversation, in the way it could reorient the phronema from construction to defense. You learned that sometimes the voice that makes you diminish sounds like an offer, not like criticism. Like Saul's armor, well-intentioned, validated, available, and completely inadequate for your body. And you learn that the deliberate return to the work is the most powerful act of recalibrating the phronema, not an event of epiphany, but a pattern of return that over time reverses the habitual direction of the mind. Now, what do you do with this? You do not go down. You name the mechanism without debating the content. You anchor in verified kavod. You protect the timing of the return. And you return to the work, because it is exactly there that the greatness of what was prepared in you will become legible for you and for those around you. The voice that makes you diminish only has the power that you attribute to it, and from today on you have its name.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you, who were tired of living in the fog, ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.